Good morning. I'm Simonne Lockwood with your Public Perspective broadcast on AM 1340 KXEO, and it is Saturday, March the 12th. This week's topic is city, and we have with us today two very special guests, Mr. Bruce Slagle, the Mexico City manager, and Mr. Steve Hobbs, the presiding commissioner of Audrain County. Bruce and Steve, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. All right, could we start off this interview by hearing a little bit about each of you?
All right. Well, I will start. I've been the Mexico City manager now a little over 4.5 years. Prior to that, I was city manager in Iowa in 3 different communities before I came down. So I'm in like my 25th, 26th year of being a city manager.
I was going to say you came with a lot of experience.
Yeah, I've done this a few years anyway, and at the same time, I also spent some time in the public sector doing some different things as well in the private sector, and enjoyed all my experiences, and just glad to be here and working for the community of Mexico.
Great.
Well, I'm Steve Hobbs, presiding commissioner in Audrain County. Was elected to that position in 2010 and reelected in 2014. Before that, I served 8 years in Missouri General Assembly representing this area. And as always, my wife and I have our family farm just north and east of Mexico. So lived here all my life and been very fortunate to have my kids grow up in the same area I did and go to the same schools I went to.
Awesome. So what made you decide to stay in the area?
Well, when you're a farmer, you're kind of tied to your land. And quite frankly, there's no place I would rather be. I have friends that talk about retiring on a beach or going someplace where it's warm, but I plan on retiring right here.
Oh, well, that's great. So did you go to Mexico public schools?
Yes, ma'am, I did,
All right.
And had a good experience there just as my children did.
Okay, how exciting. All right, now, Bruce, when did you say you moved to the area?
I actually took over city manager Mexico starting July of 2011.
2011. Okay, now what drew you to this area?
Well, partially the opportunity. In the city management profession, especially after you've been in it for a while, a lot of it's about finding the right fit.
Right.
And the right community that you look at from your point of view and say, does my style, does my beliefs and opinions and how I like to do business, does that fit within the community? And is that community open to what you like and do? And it becomes kind of a comfort factor.
Okay.
And so, and I've been through Mexico a number of times prior to actually making that decision. And it just seemed like the right fit. And I think it has been.
So what do you like about Mexico in comparison with the other places that you've lived?
I think I would say probably the people.
The people.
And I look at that from the point of view of saying that everyone that I've encountered really, they care about the community, they care about what happens. It is what I would call a progressive environment, but yet with conservative styles. And it's about just continuing steady progress forward, and people like to see things happen, want to see things happen, and are very supportive of you.
Oh, great. Okay. Now, Steve, you are the presiding commissioner of Audrain County. So what exactly do you do in your job?
Well, we talked earlier about, describe a typical day, and that's really difficult to do because you really don't know what's going to be happening each day. There are 3 members on the county commission. I'm the presiding, which means I represent the entire county, but Tom Groves is the Western District Commissioner. He has the western half of the county, and Roger Young is the Eastern District Commissioner. Between the two of them, they have 44 years of experience on the Audrain County Commission. So there's not much that they haven't seen or have had to experience over the years. But we manage our road and bridge department, which we build bridges and we maintain about 750 miles of aggregate roads in Audrain County.
Okay.
We work with special road districts. We work with the City of Mexico, the City of Vandalia, all the other municipalities that lie within the county.
Okay.
We're also responsible for budgets for the entire county and working with that. We work with all the other elected officials on their daily duties and maintaining and providing a safe courthouse for them and working with the courts.
Okay. So you mentioned that you all are in charge of like the rural Audrain roads. Well, between you and me and our listeners, I live right on the county line, and the Audrain portion of my road always looks really nice.
Is that the Monroe County line or the Callaway County line?
I'd rather not say. But the Audrain road always looks really nice.
Well, the commissioners in Callaway County and Monroe County are great friends of ours, and we firmly believe that the Callaway County commissioners try and haul twice as much rock on their roads next to ours just to make us look bad. But we have a good time visiting about that.
I'm sure. Okay, now, Bruce, could we talk a little bit about what a typical or what your atypical days look like?
Well, it's always kind of interesting. Within the city, we have a number of different departments, from the public safety to economic development activities to public works activities, whether it's street and sanitary and storm sewers, community development from building and housing and inspections and nuisance stuff to dealing with all the parks and pool activities. And then, of course, you got to have to figure out a way from the administration side of it, from human resource side of it and finance side of it. So, I mean, there are a number of activities in those different areas that fill my time. Now, of course, you have department heads in each one of those that really work on the daily functions. But the coordination between those and what we try to do to grow the community and heading in the right direction, or what we think is the right direction anyway, is as you coordinate those activities is pretty important to the overall community. We talk many times about the priorities, and a lot of it is certainly the priorities that were identified initially, and working in that direction is making sure that we are fiscally sound, and I think we've done a real good job of that. The other priority is economic development and growth of the community, and that's something we continually work on. And then, of course, the third priority that we've really tried to work on and identify is just making our community clean, making it when you have that first impression kind of a thing. And that's something that's always in progress.
Yes.
And, this time of year it's probably at its worst in some ways when you're changing the seasons.
Yeah.
But it's about making sure we maintain a good community and making sure that it's a great place to live and be.
And you also do a lot with the city council. And one of the things that I know, I'm going to brag about you all a little bit here, but it's been my experience going to the city council meetings that you also interact with. You all are very responsive to citizen concerns.
We try to be. As I've always continually told the staff, it is our job to find solutions.
Yes.
And
exactly.
It's when somebody comes to you and has a concern, and certainly a real concern, we want to try to help. We want, the answer sometimes may not be what they're wanting, but they need to know what that is, because sometimes we can't help. But when we can, and when we are informed of it, we try to do everything we can to make the situation better.
Awesome. And for those curious, the city council meetings do happen the second Monday of the month and the fourth Monday of the month at 7 o'clock in the City Hall. All right. So I do have one last question before we take our first break. How do your two jobs interact?
I'll tell you, that is one of the things I think we as a county commissioner are the proudest of, is that there's rarely a week that goes by that we don't either talk by phone with the city manager here in Mexico or have meetings. We have found over the years that we have so many activities going on that correspond to each other. And when we pool our collective wisdom or resources, we're both much stronger. And the level of communication between all the offices that are within Audrain County and the city of Mexico, I think, are at an all-time high.
Wonderful. Anything you'd like to add, Bruce?
Well, the thing that I'd like to add is you look at it as we can accomplish so much more by working together.
Exactly.
And that's the attitude that we really have to have as we move forward. As governments, we are all there spending, in essence, sometimes the same tax dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So the best benefit of that is making sure we're as efficient as we can. And how we can be efficient is by working together to make that possible.
Exactly. All right, well, it is time for us to take our first break, and you are listening to Public Perspective on AM 1340 KXEO. Welcome back to Public Perspective on AM 1340 KXEO. With me today are two special guests, Mr. Bruce Slagle, the Mexico City manager, and Mr. Steve Hobbs, the presiding commissioner of Audrain County. Bruce and Steve, thank you again for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
All right. Now, so the big topic that we wanted to cover this morning is this proposed out-of-state sales tax that will be on the April ballot. So could we start first by just talking a little bit about what this is and how did this come about?
Okay, I will give you a little background, and Steve can add even to greater length with it.
Okay.
But I think the important point of it is this is not a new tax.
Okay.
You know, we have, this tax has been in place since 1947.
Definitely
And
not new then.
No, I mean, it's been there a long time, and it's dealing with sales tax, and it's dealing with taxes paid on the purchase of motor vehicles, trailers, boats, outboard motors.
Okay.
All right?
Person-to-person sales, too.
Okay.
Yes, it can be that as well. Now, when you look at the tax, what has happened to it is that you had a Missouri Supreme Court decision
Okay.
that it changed the interpretation, if you will, of the collection of it, okay?
Okay.
And I'm not going to try to get into a lot of the details of what they said and why they said it,
Mm-hmm.
but then it got back to the legislature then in order to try to fix it.
Okay.
And some of the fixes that they've tried certainly then gets into partisan politics, which then kind of creates it even to become more muddied, if you
Okay.
will, in how
Okay.
you deal with it. So when you kind of get from that point of view of it, it then kind of comes into how do we deal with it. And really kind of what they have said in this, to try to keep it really basic,
Mm-hmm.
is that by trying to separate it from a use tax to a sales tax, they've really come down to the point of saying that unless you have a vote that says are you going to continue to collect this,
Mm-hmm.
the issue is then you will stop collecting it
Okay.
on all purchases that are made out of state.
Okay.
So if you're in state, all the in-state purchases from everybody, you still will pay it. That doesn't change a thing. It's the ones that's purchased out of state. So the issue becomes a fairness issue to a great extent.
Okay.
Is when you look at Missouri dealerships versus out-of-state dealerships. So that will kind of sets the basis for you, and I'll let Steve fill in
Okay.
the gaps from there as he sees it as well.
Okay.
So right at the time I was leaving the General Assembly in 2010, this case was the street case was before the Supreme Court, and that ruling came down and said that the state of Missouri, because it had passed what was called a use tax in 1947, was still allowed to collect this. But the Supreme Court ruled that cities and municipalities could no longer do that. General Assembly moved in quickly, passed legislation to fix that, went to the governor's desk, and he vetoed it. So they came back and passed a different fix. This time it changed it from a use tax, which how it was normally handled, and put it under a sales tax. And they also provided ballot language that we'll talk about here later in the interview that is, to say the least, confusing. The problem with that is changing that opens up a whole different set of issues. So trying to deal with this now, they gave us a window of time, and they said that by November of 2016, you had to put before the voters, should you discontinue collecting this sales tax on out-of-state purchases of motor vehicles and boats and outboard motors and on person-to-person sales.
Okay.
there have been attempts to extend that deadline, and they've failed over the last few years. And there's another attempt at that this year, but I don't hold a lot of hope that that's going to happen.
Okay.
So that brings us to where we're at here on the April ballot and why it's on the April ballot this year.
Okay. So in very, very basic terms, this is a tax that has existed for a long time.
We're collecting it today.
Some language got changed, and now we have to decide to keep the tax or not.
Right.
We as voters.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, really, the court changed the interpretation.
Okay.
And now we are in a position that we have to deal with it in order to keep it.
Okay, so how is this tax going to affect me as a voter that will decide on this? How will it affect me?
Well, it just depends. Let's say if the voters say that we should not continue collecting this tax in April, then you could go, say, to Illinois and buy a vehicle over there, bring it back here and license it in Mexico.
Right.
And you would not pay the city's portion of that tax if this is denied. Now, that's only if you buy a vehicle out of state.
Right.
It would, and so what happened in some of the communities that are real close to the border when this first passed, like in Joplin, Missouri, over in Pittsburgh, Kansas, they were taking out full-page ads in the Joplin newspaper saying, come to Kansas and buy your vehicle, and you're going to save $400 on your car.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So in the bigger, where you're really close to the border and you've got a lot of auto dealerships around there, it's been a real big issue, and we're talking literally hundreds of thousands of dollars for those type of communities. So it also depends on how this all goes, because it has to be approved by every taxing entity that has a sales tax.
Okay.
It's not one vote. The City of Mexico has to have a vote. The County of Audrain has to have a vote.
Okay.
Any taxing entity has to have this language on the ballot.
So when you pick up your ballot, you're going to see, shall the City of Mexico continue this? Shall Audrain County continue this?
Okay.
Shall the ambulance district continue this? Shall the emergency 911 communication center? So, I mean...
But on the ballot, it actually says, shall the City of Mexico discontinue collecting sales tax?
Okay.
And that's the language that we got from the General Assembly out of statute, that we were strongly advised to use and not deviate from that.
Okay.
And that's where the confusion of the language and the point that everybody has to do it. And so all of a sudden you're going to see this question, quite honestly, a number of times on the ballot. And that's the confusing part of it, the way the question's written, and as many times as you see it.
Okay.
That's one reason we got together early this spring with all the sales tax entities and talked about this. And those that decided to put this on the ballot in April, it was a consensus that everybody have the ballot language is confusing enough.
Right.
But for Audrain County to have different ballot language than the City of Mexico, when folks are going to see that side by side on the ballot,
that would make it worse.
Make it 10 times worse.
Oh, yeah.
So we decided that we want that language to be the same.
Okay,
and so we
good
pulled
deal.
it directly out of statute.
All right, good deal. So going back to, we were talking about this in terms of what it's going to mean for me living in Mexico. So what is the city's current tax rate?
Okay. Now this is realize this is sales tax. Our current city sales tax rate is at 2%.
Okay.
1% of that basically goes to the general fund.
All right.
A 0.5% or half of a penny, so to speak, of that then goes to support the parks.
Okay.
And half goes to capital improvements. So if you really look at the 2%, you get 1% going to the general, 0.5% going to parks, 0.5% going to capital improvements.
Okay.
So without that, that affects those departments in what you can do for park improvements, what you can do for capital improvements, such as roads and streets, and then in general term, just maintaining general operations.
Right. So if we don't continue collecting this tax, it could have a detriment on those funds.
It could. I mean, we in the City of Mexico, that would probably be based on the estimates that we've gotten from the State Department of Revenue, they're saying it could be somewhere around $65,000 a year.
That is a lot.
So when you start thinking about, the number of blocks of streets to be paved, or a playground, or a shelter house, or a bathroom, or whatever, in the parks, that makes a difference.
And we've got to have our bathrooms. All right. Well, it is time for us to take our second break, and we're going to continue this discussion when we get back. We've had a lot of good information here, so we're going to keep delving into that a little more. So you are listening to Public Perspective on AM 1340 KXEO. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Public Perspective on AM 1340 KXEO. With me today are two very special guests, Mr. Bruce Slagle, the City Manager of Mexico, and Mr. Steve Hobbs, the Presiding Commissioner of Audrain County. Thanks one more time for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
All right, very glad to have you here. Now, we have been talking about this proposed tax that will be on the April ballots, and this is an existing tax that we have been paying since, you said, 1943? 47, okay, for a while. Now, we had just talked about what the city's sale tax rate currently is, and you had mentioned, Steve, that the county rate is different.
Right.
Okay.
In Audrain County, we have 2 half-cent sales taxes that go to the General Revenue Fund.
Okay.
And then we have a half-cent sales tax that's dedicated to law enforcement and the building and then the upkeep of the Audrain County Jail.
Okay.
And so our rate is 1.5 cents. And as you look at that, you look at the different municipalities that in the county. Vandalia is 1.5 cents. They have.
Okay. They
also are going to have this on the April ballot. Then those are the funds that would be directly responsible to Audrain. Now, you also have Audrain County 911. Theirs is a totally separate fund, separate board. They have a 3/8 cent sales tax for their operations. And then you have Audrain Ambulance District. If you live within an ambulance district, they have a 1/2 cent sales tax. So all of those entities would be affected by this.
Okay. And you have covered this just a little bit, but just as a quick recap, so other cities like Mexico are being affected, will be affected.
Yes, they will be. Vandalia, I know, has it on the April ballot. Vanfar Ambulance District has it on the April ballot. 911 has it on the April ballot. Audrain Ambulance has it on the April ballot. So if you live in the city of Mexico, when you go to the polls in April, you will see, shall the county of Audrain discontinue collecting sales tax on out-of-state vehicles, etc. Right? And the next piece you'll see was, shall the city of Mexico, shall Audrain Ambulance, shall 911. 911 is county-wide, so it would be over the whole county. So anywhere you vote, you'll see Audrain County and 911. If you live in a municipality, you see those municipalities. If you live in an ambulance district, you will see those folks. Those are the folks that have sales tax issues on the ballot.
Okay, makes sense.
And your other point as well is that there are a number of places across the state affected by this.
Yes.
And so this question, if you will be posed on a number of ballots, probably in April, and then some in August, and probably some in November. But it's pretty much a statewide issue.
There's like 30 some odd counties that have this on the April ballot at the last meeting I was at.
Okay, that's a lot. All right, so since this is an out-of-state sales tax that we're talking about here, how is whatever is decided going to impact our local dealerships?
Well, there's one thing that we're trying to look at and say, we look at it from the point of view of saying the existing tax currently as it is creates a level playing field, okay? However, if the tax ends on those purchases from out of state, we believe that it creates a competitive disadvantage, certainly to your local dealers.
Of course.
And so in some ways, it's the out-of-state ones, so to speak, that would enjoy the benefit. And but regardless of the local portion might go away if that happens, you're still going to pay the state portion regardless of where it's from.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. Okay. Now, we had touched on this in an earlier segment, but I'd like to bring it up again. What is the impact of if we keep the tax, if we get rid of the tax? What is that impact going to be for the city of Mexico?
Yeah, and as we commented earlier, the estimated loss, in essence, to us would roughly be about $65,000 a year.
Okay.
And for Audrain County, we're looking in the $40,000 to $50,000 range.
$40,000
so,
to $50,000.
I mean, you're talking about that's 2 police cruisers that we would replace, and put that in simple terms. There's a lot of uncertainty because they don't know you don't know if it doesn't continue on, if there will be a big upswing in people buying out of state. I mean, all of these are estimates that we get from the Department of Revenue because it's really hard to put a finger on it.
Sure.
You know, it's kind of based on past experiences, and who knows what the future experiences will be.
Right. So in essence, these collections are going towards services that the public needs. So a loss in money wouldn't be good for the county. It wouldn't be good for the city, and we get part of that money from this tax.
Correct.
We get part of our operations from that, and I don't want to be in a position of saying, oh, well, you're going to lose this or you're going to lose that.
Sure.
It doesn't happen.
Sure.
But certainly, when you have at home, it's no different. Decrease in income.
Yep.
Changes how you live.
Eating a lot of ramen.
The other thing is that if you have businesses, whether you're selling new cars or used cars, you're selling outboard motors or boats, if you're put at a competitive disadvantage by a Supreme Court ruling, that lowers the profitability of those businesses, which lowers the amount of taxes they're able to pay and contributions they're able to make for various charitable organizations in the community. It has a ripple effect through your entire economy.
Yeah. Okay, now we had talked a little bit earlier about the ballot language, and it is a little bit tricky. So can we talk a little bit about what does a no vote and what does a yes vote mean?
Okay. If you look at the question again, and we've tried to stress it because the issue is confusing, and we recognize that. But again, we are following exactly what the state set us to do.
Right.
But it really says, shall which entity, whether it be Audrain County or the City of Mexico, discontinue applying and collecting, the local sales tax on this. So therefore, when you look at it, what does a no or a yes vote mean? A no vote basically means no change. Everything stays in place. No new taxes. Business goes on.
Okay.
A yes vote would mean that the local sales tax would only then be collected on in-state purchases. It wouldn't be collected on out-of-state purchases. And then this is where we talk about creating the disadvantages and having a reduction in revenue.
And the thing is that while Bruce and I are here and we're explaining the issue to you, as an elected official and as a city manager of the City of Mexico, we can't advocate for issues that we put on the ballot. We can educate, however, and that's what we're trying to accomplish here today, because if you start having the conversation with folks, they say, why is it so complicated? And in conversations we've had with Senator Riddle and Representative Houghton, they feel our pain. They've tried everything they can to change it, to make it better, and have not been able to get anywhere. So these are the cards we're dealt. And so this is why it's important for us to explain to people what this really means. Doing
the best with what we've got. All right. Now, the date to vote on this is April 5th.
April 5th. Tuesday, April 5th. And, this is just one question on the ballot because, of course, you'll have your city council seats. You'll have, let's see, school board won't be because I just have, but there will be other questions and other things on the ballot. It's really called the municipal election date.
Right. Okay. And there is a list of polling locations on the Audrain County website. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Or if you have questions, anybody can call the Audrain County Clerk's office at 573-473-5820. Cards have been sent out. There's been some consolidation of polling places because a lot of times an April election doesn't have as big a turnout as what we'll have, say, this in November for the presidential election.
Okay.
But cards have been sent out if your polling place has been consolidated. If you didn't get anything, you're voting at the same place.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else that you would like to add this morning?
All I would say in general terms, if there's any questions, confusions, give us a call. We'll try to answer them. Like you say, we can't advocate for it. And we're not trying to do that. It's just that we're trying to say this is a difficult issue. We'll do the best we can to answer your question.
And I can say that for the same for Audrain County. If you have questions, call us, email us. We'll be happy to try and answer your questions. I'm sure any of the other entities throughout the county would be happy to do the same. The one thing you can know is that the ballot language will all be the same, so hopefully that will slow down some of the confusion.
Okay, great. Well, that is our time for this morning, and thank you so much for coming in and speaking about this today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, it's been great to have you all in this morning, and you all have been listening to Mr. Bruce Slagle, the Mexico City manager, and Mr. Steve Hobbs, the presiding commissioner of Audrain County. This has been your Public Perspective broadcast on AM 1340 KXEO. Have a great Saturday.